Okay, good afternoon. I'm Westchester County Executive George Latimer, and I'm here with our Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, our Director of Operations Joan McDonald, and three of our key commissioners in Westchester County, our Commissioner of Emergency Services John Cullen, our Commissioner of DPW Transportation Hugh Grecian, and our Commissioner Sheriff of Public Safety Tom Gleason. And we brought out all the brass today because we saw the first sign of a snowfall. Trying to stay ahead of the game. You may recall that last year in November, we saw a significant snow incident occur, which really created a problem for an afternoon commute, and people immediately start to realize when you hit the month of November that the winter is at hand. Legally or meteorologically, it doesn't come for another month, but the weather now has taken a sharp turn for the cold. So we thought we'd have an opportunity to talk a little bit about today and what some of the preparations are. And you can consider that these are the preparations that are going to happen now on every day when the three commissioners behind me and the various operational people are looking ahead to see what's going to happen with snow and the potential for difficult travel conditions. The weather report for today shows that there's going to be flurries this afternoon with dropping temperatures. This morning at about 8 o'clock, temperature was about 45 degrees, fairly temperate for this time of the year. Now we're heading into the 30s, and it's going to continue down. I guess overnight it'll be in the 20s. And so there's also a wind that's kicking up as part of this change in temperature. And so we're going to have an immediate impact. And I think we're concerned about the wind factor because we've seen in the last couple of years that when we have high wind, we can have issues with falling branches and with power outages. So we're going to monitor all those things. Hugh, as head of DPW Transportation, is tasked with the major roadways that the county has, which is really very few. Most of the roadways in the county are municipal roads, and then we have some state and federal highway roads that are state responsible for. But we do own and manage and maintain the Bronx River Parkway, Playland Parkway, a number of other roads in the county, and it falls within Hugh's department to monitor those roads, to be prepared to salt those roads if we think that a salting in advance of what might be snow to follow should be the case. We don't expect there to be an accumulation of snow, but that's what Hugh and his team will monitor and make sure that things are fine. And then also to clear branches. Those can happen at any time, but whenever there's a heavy wind, you expect it to happen more frequently. I was just on the Bronx River Parkway, and of course, the road was built in the 1920s. It has a certain width to it. There are beautiful trees that line it. On a summer's day, it's the most lovely road to drive, and if the wind kicks up, it can create some impediments. So that is something that we're going to keep an eye on. There is flooding on any of our parkways, many of our parkways. We see it at the Sawmill routinely. Hudson River Parkway and, of course, the Bronx River Parkway get flooding situations. Commissioner Sheriff Gleason and his team is responsible for patrolling all of the parkways. We own and operate the Bronx River Parkway, but we have to have police presence on all of the parkways in Westchester County. And his patrol group, under the direction of Chief Chris Calabrese, is going to be out with the usual patrols. They may heavy up on them depending on circumstances if it warrants it. And they'll be out there to help motorists should there be any situations. If there is standing water and the temperature gets low, it will ice over. And it may be something where you're not going to see a crew address that in an immediate time frame. So prudence always matters when you're out driving, and I will be out driving in the same time frame. So as a driver, I have to show the same prudence. Beware of any standing water, any spots that could ice over. They will ice over tonight, I assume. And, of course, while the county police is there to help you, it would be better if you don't need the help in the first place. But Tom will be there to make sure. Since we don't expect any significant accumulation, our emergency services department will not have to go to whatever we call DEFCON 4 in the county. But they are available. Dennis Del Borgo, who works under Commissioner Collins' direction, will continue to give all the departments of county government information about the weather conditions. Should something change, should we think we'll get a significant amount of precipitation to go with the cold weather conditions, then there'll be additional activities that have to be taken and to monitor these things. We stay in close touch, and Joan McDonald and her operations team stays in close touch with Con Edison and NYSEG to monitor the number of outages that occur and to determine where the county has to and the municipal governments have to cooperate with the utilities should the weather conditions get to be the point where there's significant power outages, there are trees down, trees that take out power lines and so forth. We've been through this more than once in our brief tenure in office, but if we face it again, it's a very simple three-step process, but all three steps have to work. The power company has to shut off the power. Then the municipal or the county DPW function takes the impediment out of the road, if it's a tree or a telephone pole or whatever it might be, branches, and then the utility crew comes back in and turns on the power. And that three-step dance, and Riley and Quinn in the spring of, the winter of 2018 proved to be a problem. But the utilities have made efforts to try to prevent that from happening to the same degree. Joan and her team monitors that, and then we deploy resources to back up the local governments as is possible. We have a function that's very important in this county. We manage the social service function of the county, and the Department of Social Services. Our commissioner for that department, Kevin McGuire, is not with us today because he is in the process of making sure that all of our programs are in effect. We have responsibility for shelter and drop-in centers to take care of people who may be homeless or who might otherwise be living outside of a warm shelter. And we provide locations across the county in Yonkers and Peekskill and a number of other communities. And we have a code blue that kicks in whenever the temperature gets to a certain level. I believe it is going to be at that level tonight, as we understand it. And that means that not only that we have the availability to accommodate whatever that population is, but we will have people out in the street trying to monitor and find and help people get the shelter that they need. In those situations, we work in coordination with the local officials in each of those cities to try to make sure that no one spends the night outside, because it is life-threatening to spend out overnight in exposure to deep cold weather. And however cold it gets tonight, this is only the beginning of multiple nights throughout the course of the fall, winter, and season. But all of our systems are going to be operating. We don't expect any impediment to our bus system, transit, or our airport situation. You'd need, sort of a very significant storm condition. We don't anticipate the kind of snow to go to snow routes. We have normal routes that involve steep inclines in Yonkers, Ossining, and a number of other places. That also falls under Hugh's department, and he has people that monitor that, manage that. We don't anticipate that now, but that could certainly happen the next time we have an indication of snow. And moving to snow routes becomes sort of a standard immediate opportunity, because many of those buses, the articulated buses, can't negotiate the slope on some of those streets. And the people who use those, the bus system in those streets, are pretty aware that what the alternate stops are. But we won't go to that today. We also obviously don't expect any problem at the Westchester County Airport, which is also our responsibility. The decision to open or close an airport is not just ours alone to make, but in a different kind of situation, we'll take a look at it. The next set of comments here fall into the category of Stanley Latimer telling George Latimer, when he was 16 years old, what to do. When I was 16, I didn't get it, and sometimes at 66, I don't get it. These are common sense things that we all need to do. And if this is just the very beginning of cold weather and the kind of weather conditions that could be a problem for us, then we should remind ourselves again. This is a perfect time to make sure that our vehicles are in good operating order, that our tires are in good shape before we go into the winter season, to make sure that the windshield wipers are in good shape. We'll have to wipe off, whatever wintry mix that comes, and if it reduces visibility, it creates a potential problem for us. Fill your gas tank up. Again, this is Stan telling George, and now George telling the rest of the world. Make sure you have a full tank of gas so that if anything happens, you can get stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. We saw that happen in the incident last year. And when you think you have a quarter of a tank and that's enough, then it's not enough when you're not able to exit off a highway and there's miles to go before you can get gas again. That's another consistent thing. Make sure you have a phone charger. Your phone is queued up. You don't want to lose your ability to communicate to the outside world. In situations like that, dress warmly. I should have done that today. I did not. But there are winter supplies and emergency supplies you ought to have in your car. You ought to have them anyway: flares, and emergency reflective triangles, a flashlight, bottled water, blanket for extra warmth, all generally good advice. I'll save the storm advice for when we have a storm. But all of these very practical advice things, this is like the beginning of this. It's a good time to remind yourself. In the same way that when you turn the clock back, you should check the batteries in your smoke detectors in your house. It's a good idea. The first time you hear about the first flurry, that's what today is. This is a good time to start to be prepared for the winter that's going to come. We will have a robust winter, if I believe the Farmer's Almanac, and the ladies and men of Westchester County government are going to be working overtime before too long. If it doesn't happen today, it'll happen soon enough. And I do want to thank each of them for their professionalism and the way they handle these issues as they arise. So that's pretty much what we wanted to make sure that with the first potential sign of snow, or at least flurries, that you know that we're prepared to do the things that we're tasked to do. We work very closely with the state of New York that has operations here to work in concert with them. And if the governor declares an emergency, we'll do all the things that are necessary. We work very closely with our municipal governments on an everyday basis in all of these different departments to try to work. If they need a piece of equipment that we have that they don't, we'll be happy to help them out, solve a problem there. And you know, we're tough people, we New Yorkers. We get through these things. We'll get through them again. We've done it in the past. We'll do it again. But as a reminder, first snowflake, get ready. Winter's here. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions from the press. Yes, sir.
You know, you talked about last year's November, traffic lock.
Mhm.
What have you learned from that going forward with it? I mean, it doesn't look like it's really as bad, but I'm just
Yeah, this incident today will not be analogous to that. What we learned is if snow falls heavily at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a unique problem, which is traffic on the roads and the need to clear up snow off the roads at the exact same time. So it turned out that what happened last year was not, it was of greater intensity than was anticipated. I think all of the governments from, I guess, as far south as Virginia, as far north as Maine, were caught by a more intense experience a year ago. But it wasn't as if at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon nobody knew what to do. The problem was that you couldn't start to shovel snow until it reaches at least 3 inches, and Hugh will be happy to explain that in greater detail if that's helpful. And by the time it reached the point at which plows could be used to move snow out of the way, we had gridlock on our roads, people leaving early and so forth. So it was a bad set of circumstances, the perfect storm all coming together at the same time. So if we've learned anything, we've learned to make sure that we're making the best possible estimates of what we think is going to happen. And today is an example where we don't think there's going to be a problem of anything like that magnitude. But here we are at 1:30 in the afternoon, 1:45 in the afternoon, talking about what we would have to do in planning. So I guess that's probably the biggest takeaway.
just one more.
Sure.
There was some road work on the Bronx River Parkway. They were doing some, I guess,
Yep.
paving and stuff. Do you think that's going to be done by tonight? Does that have any sort of effect?
Well, are you in a position where you can comment on the work? They cone off the right-hand lane.
Yeah, I think it's
F-
but it's
Yeah, it's in the Scarsdale entering into White Plains, south of White Plains. Are you familiar with that project at all? Why don't you comment on that?
Yes, we're keeping an eye on the weather. I'm familiar with that. We're doing some repaving out there also. We're trying to get that done before the end of the year. There's some sections there that are really in need of resurfacing right before the winter. Try to get that, because the winter is very hard on the roadway, and if there are potholes, it just accelerates very quickly. But we're watching the weather. We're right now we don't anticipate a problem with that, but we can shut that down literally within minutes.
Any other questions from our friends in the press?
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. One.
The other thing that I know you were with the telephone companies and those kind of things. There was the dead trees, and I know a lot of the companies started chopping down a lot of those trees. Do you have any sort of approximation of how many trees, dead trees that they were able to knock down?
I don't have a number for you. We can find that information out for you. I know that in the aftermath of Raleigh and Quinn, the utility companies were very aggressive about pruning back as much as they could where they could. And, I don't have a specific number for you. We can certainly find out. I don't know if there's an exact number because there's a certain amount of ongoing tree removal that goes on. I think what it did do is it sensitized people to the fact that when we have trees, not only that are dead and need to be removed, but trees that are overhanging, branches overhanging and wires and what have you, that we need to have an aggressive program. And it can be inconvenient. You're blocking a road in order to do the work. Sometimes it changes the shade reality in someone's neighborhood or in an area. And we've had more than one situation. I'm sure they could all tell stories about residents who came out and challenged the people who were in the process of tree pruning and said, don't do this, this is a fine tree, and and all. And I can understand it. It's a human nature thing. But we'll get you some metrics if you think that's helpful. What it really comes down to is the incidents that happened of the greatest magnitude in the winter of 2018, early 2018. We did not have a repeat of that level of incident in the same period of time in 2019. So both of the utilities committed to us that they would do certain things that would help the process. They'd have more equipment available here in Westchester to deploy at a moment's notice, that they had metrics by which they would have enough manpower out to operate that equipment at a time. And John particularly was involved in ongoing conversations with how that worked. However, we were fortunate in 19, and we hope to be fortunate as we go into the same time frame in 20, that we don't get incidents like we had back to back. But you can never tell. We talk about 100-year storms, and we get 3 of them in 5 years. So there's no way to judge what would happen. We think we're better prepared, but only a fool would give a guarantee. So hopefully we'll be tested at a level that we can respond to effectively. So, any other questions? Anyway, thank you all for stopping by. If you'd like to interview any of these people one-on-one, and as I mentioned too, their lanes of conversation, Hugh can talk about some very specific things in the way our DPW transportation operate. Tom will talk about our police services out there. And John can talk about emergency services, and certainly Joan has overall responsibility for the whole thing as Director of Operations, and we'll be happy to talk one-on-one if you like. Might be a background piece that you'll use in the future, but you're welcome to do that. Thank you for coming by. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.